Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our November 14th, 2023 regular meeting of Belleville Council. The City of Belleville acknowledges we are meeting today on the traditional territories of many nations. The municipality operates on the unceded and unsurrendered lands of our Indigenous peoples. We recognize and honor the historic relationship of the Indigenous peoples to this land and acknowledge our shared obligation to respect, honor, and sustain these lands and the natural resources contained within them. We recognize all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit who call Belleville their home and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship with them. We look forward to fostering a path towards reconciliation and show respect for the Indigenous peoples who first lived and currently live on the land where we now all reside together. I will call this meeting to order. Please remain standing for a minute of reflection from City Clerk Matt McDonald.
May we be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. Help us to be concerned only for what will promote good government. May we bring to our council chamber minds that think and hearts that feel, always having respect for others so that we may serve the people of our city in a helpful manner and for the good of all.
Please be seated. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Seeing none, attendance, everybody's here except Councillor Millette. I need a motion for reading and confirmation of minutes, regular council meeting minutes of October 10th, 23, and a special in-camera meetings of September 19th, 23, and regular in-camera meeting of September 25th, 23. Councillor Chatton, Councillor Enright Miller, all in favor? Carried. First in deputations, I just want to say I had the honor a couple of weeks ago to go to the induction of the Belleville McFarlands. The 1959 World Cup champions were inducted into the Ontario Sports Hall of Fame. I traveled to Ottawa with a few of the grandkids of Wiener Brown, and there was lots of Belleville people there, and lots of Crawfords were there, and Mr. Bell was there, so Gordy's dad, our son, and it was an overwhelming experience to see the team sworn in. And it's something that was long to come, and it finally did happen, and it was a great night. So I have Ian Press here with the Hockey Hall of Fame, if you could come to the podium, and we have the actual induction, want to call it trophy. I'll come up to you, Ian. And we have a Max book for you and one of the programs from the Hockey Hall of Fame. So I know you have the key to everything up there, so this was, we found that would be a great place for you guys to share this with. And we have a Max book for you and the actual program for the Hockey Hall of Fame. And I don't know if you want to say a few words on the spot here tonight, or
just on the spot. Yeah. No, I'll just say thank you very much. Obviously, the McFarlands team is one of the biggest things with regards to the Belleville Sports Hall of Fame, and we've done various displays over the years, and this will be put in the display case, one of the display cases very soon, and it'll be part of the Hall of Fame probably forever, in the sense I don't see this changing.
I wanted to keep it for my house, but I thought I'd have to.
Yeah, you might have been calling you anyway.
Yeah, I might have been calling on that. So I think we wanted to maybe get a picture of you here with it, so we can do the presentation.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, plaque. You want to put the plaque up? Grab a Max book or what?
Yeah. Yeah. You tell us.
Thanks, Ian, for coming in.
Yes, thank you.
Take care.
Thank you to the City of Belleville for your continued support of the Hall of Fame. It's greatly appreciated. Thanks.
Next, we have Nancy Cairns is going to make a deputation to council. Nancy, are you here? Yes. Hi, Nancy. How are you doing?
Hi.
The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And thank you for this opportunity to speak to this incredibly important issue. I'd also like to thank you, the council members, for your service to your community. As a former political assistant out of Ottawa, I know firsthand the amazing work that happens in these rooms and sometimes the personal sacrifices involved in being a public servant. I want to be very clear that I hold you in the highest regard and know that many of you are professionals and community builders who go into politics because you wanted to give back. What I am speaking about today is not a partisan issue. It's not even a political issue. It is an accountability issue and a human rights issue. It's about bringing the Ontario Municipal Act up to the same standards as any other work environment in the province. So to give a little bit of background here, in 2017, Bill 68 was introduced, which ensured that all municipalities had to have a code of conduct as well as an integrity commissioner. These codes of conduct are good, but we've discovered that they are rendered basically useless when the most severe penalty that can be imposed on municipal councillors is the suspension for 90 days, which is imposed on them by their colleagues. There is no process for removing councillors from office for misconduct. This creates an unsafe work environment for you. In places like Ottawa, Mississauga, Kincardine, Oshawa, Sudbury, and Richmond Hill, there have been news stories with reports of abuse and bullying between council colleagues. Moving on to 2018, Municipal World Magazine, they had an article called Councillors Behaving Badly, and in it, there was a statistic that 77% of respondents at an AMO conference reported harassment and bullying by elected officials, with 76% stating that they had personally been at the receiving end of harassment by a member of council. Now, I share this statistic not to imply that 77% of elected officials are perpetrating harassment, but to show the impact that the few are having on your work environment. News stories involving bullying and harassment of municipal staff across Ontario include Simcoe, Barrie, North Shore, Sarnia, and Prescott. In 2022, there was a report out of Brighton, which is nearby, that highlighted the bullying and harassment that staff endured by some of Brighton's council members. Moving on to 2019, we've got the Rick Shirelli allegations, and I myself and others came forward about our traumatic experience where we endured, quote, incomprehensible incidents of harassment while working for the councillor. Also that year was when a sitting councillor in Brampton was alleged to have kissed, pulled the skirt and underwear off of a Brampton businesswoman who said no 74 times in a 2-minute 57-second recording during a trade mission to Turkey. In Barrie, in that year, a councillor was alleged to have asked a municipal employee what their thoughts were on grabbing a woman's behind in public and telling them that they had to go for dinner with them and they were not allowed to bring anyone else. In 2021 was when Stephen Blais, who is a member of provincial parliament out of Ottawa, brought a private member's bill forward, Bill 10, Stopping Harassment and Abuse by Local Leaders Act, and myself and two of my former colleagues, we worked together to create a petition that accompanied that bill. In 2021 also, there was a consultation that was launched by the government to strengthen municipal codes of conduct. But then in 2022, there was a provincial election and a municipal election, actually. But when the provincial election happened, Bill 10 basically died on the floor, but it did have complete support. 2022 was also when in Brampton, Barrie, and Ottawa, the councillors of credibly investigated harassment and abuse either lost the election or they didn't run. The Barrie councillor actually ran for mayor. 3 years of collecting pensionable hours, voting on municipal budgets, policies, and initiatives, and 3 years where councils and staff were forced to work in a credibly unsafe work environment. Then in 2022, Stephen Blais, he won again, and he brought his private member's bill forward again, Bill 5. That's where the Women of Ontario Say No. They did amazing work to actually bring this across the province and to really put a lot of support behind Bill 5. But unfortunately, despite AMO, big city mayors, and Roma all endorsing the bill, it didn't make it past the second reading. So in 2023, so in this year. And then in 2023, also the City of Toronto endorsed an integrity commissioner's report with recommendations. I have a little bit more about that coming up. So I just wanted to outline a few things. In the Ontario Municipal Act, politicians can be forced to vacate their seat between elections. I've condensed the sections relating to this in the Ontario Municipal Act onto this page. Some of the reasons are 3 months of absenteeism without asking your colleagues if you can take the more than 3 months off. If you no longer own or rent land, or your spouse no longer owns or rents land in the municipality where you're representing, you can be forced to vacate your seat between elections. And you can, if you become disqualified under Section 17 of the Ontario Municipal Elections Act. So basically what that means is that you are no longer eligible to vote. So I'd like to remind everyone that we are talking about workplace conduct standards. This means a person convicted of assault while a sitting member of council will not be forced to vacate their seat unless sentenced to jail, because you have to be sentenced to imprisonment in order to lose your seat. So even charges, even conviction, as long as you're not sentenced to jail, you can still stay. And I'm not speaking about you in this room. I'm speaking about the perpetrators of abuse. So the statistics in the black section at the bottom of the slide kind of give you an idea of how often jail time occurs. In Ontario, we've had sitting members of council facing sexual assault charges in places like Woodstock, Scarborough, and South Glengarry. And in the case of South Glengarry, that mayor also faced charges of child luring. And my heart really, it goes out to the council members in South Glengarry. They were put in a really impossible situation because of the way that the Ontario Municipal Act is structured at this moment. So if I were thinking about running in politics, or if I were a council member in South Glengarry, or if I was thinking about taking a job in a municipality and I knew that if my council colleague or one of my top bosses, if I were a municipal employee, could assault me and I'd still have to show up to work with them every day, even if I reported it, I would pass. I wouldn't want to be in an environment where I didn't feel safe. To really put things in perspective, if a council member misses 3 months of council meetings, they can be forced to vacate their seat, but child luring charges or harassing and keying a fellow council member's car, which is something that actually happened in Mississauga, regularly sexually harassing a municipal staff member or threatening to end someone's career with their power and influence because of the color of their skin, their religion, or sexual orientation or identity. According to the Ontario Municipal Act, those perpetrators of abuse they get to stay. They might lose pay, but they get to stay until the next election. So I'm here today to ask you for your help. Asking that all Ontario municipalities send a letter of support calling on the government to introduce their own legislation. I mean, they did a consultation already about this very subject. So introduce some legislation that will amend the Municipal Act and the City of Toronto Act that's in line with the calls from the Women of Ontario Say No, who supported Bill 5, and the AMO recommendations, which I'm going to get into. Roma, they supported Bill 5. That's the Rural Ontario Municipalities Association, Ontario Big City Mayors, AMO, Association of Ministers of Ontario, and the City of Toronto. So here are the AMO recommendations, and I think that they are thoughtful and impactful recommendations, and these resulted from, my understanding, is an AMO consulting process. And I'd really like to highlight number 4 and 5, which really speaks to what I've been talking about in this presentation, which is the removal of a council member for misconduct and the being prohibited from running again. Council members can be removed for fiduciary reasons. So, misconduct, especially when we're talking about egregious misconduct, there's no protection, there's nothing. The Toronto Integrity Commissioner recommendations came out in October of this year, and the Integrity Commissioner was very intentional about something that I really want to highlight, and that is that these cases should not be debated and decided by council, because what's happening with the current system is an HR issue is turning into a political issue, and that's what happened in Ottawa, and it cost Ottawa taxpayers a ton of money to figure that out through a judiciary review. So we need change. The current system is dysfunctional, in my opinion, and not only because there is a lack of accountability for misconduct, but also because councillors are being forced to reprimand their colleagues. It doesn't make sense. So please send your letters to your local MPP, Todd Smith, to Doug Ford, Paul Calandra, and Charmaine Williams. And then I'd like to leave on this note that was written in the Integrity Commissioner's report out of Toronto. When the public trust is breached, someone should be removed from office under the Municipal Elections Act. 1996, someone can automatically be removed for late filings or failing to file accurate financial statements. Under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, a judge may declare a member of council's seat vacant, order financial restitution, suspend pay, or order a reprimand for a member who acts improperly by furthering their own pecuniary interests. Harassment and discrimination in the workplace is a similar breach of the public's trust. Ontario's Human Rights Code includes protections against harassment and discrimination in the workplace. The Occupational Health and Safety Act requires employers to address harassment in their workplaces. This legislation, however, does not provide any effective sanctions against elected officials. Unlike managers and employees in the workplace, a member of council cannot be dismissed if they are found to have harassed or discriminated against others in the workplace. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and that's it.
Do we have any questions? Councillor Chatton?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Some of what you outlined would be described as behaving badly. However, much of what you've touched on is criminal. Uncomfortable to hear. I can only imagine how uncomfortable that may be to give a deputation for. So thank you for doing this with us today. You've graphically illustrated the power imbalances that exist and provided an opportunity for us to do something to safeguard our own municipality, even if not needed right now, but for future council. So I'm more than happy to make a motion for a letter of support as requested by Ms. Cairns in line with the AMO recommendations.
Okay, I need a seconder for that motion. Councillor Enright Miller. Questions or discussion on the motion? Councillor Carr?
Not on the motion. I see we have a resolution from Hastings County, but just a question of the deputation. So I see that Bill 5 was voted down back in May on second reading. Any indication why the government, it was disappointing to see our local MPPs voted against it. It looks like perhaps maybe it was a whip vote. Any indication why the government wasn't supporting this particular piece of legislation, considering that Roma, AMO, and other groups have come forward, as well as you've been obviously advocating for some time. So there was a concerted voice, if you will, that had support for it. And if AMO's supporting it, that represents all of us. Any indication why the province, and particularly the government, the sitting government, oppose this piece of legislation?
Thank you for the question through you, Mayor. I mean, I can only speculate. I think that we need to ask our MPPs why they would vote this down. From what I've seen publicly, they've said that that they believe that it should be through the ballot box. But like I pointed out through my presentation, there's already mechanisms in place to unseat a councillor between elections for other reasons. So adding misconduct, it's just common sense. And again, it's about human rights and safe workplaces for all. Everyone in this room, again, I have so much respect for council members. I know how much work goes into it. I know about the late nights, the grocery shopping, and people feel like coming up to you while you're with your families. Like, I know how much you already sacrifice. I really believe that councils should be safe from, should create a safe environment, especially if we want to see more diversity on our councils. By bringing the standards up to the same as any other workplace in Ontario, that would be a great start. So thank you for your question.
That's great. Thank you for coming.
Councillor Thompson?
Thanks very much. One question. So you're wanting the government to give more power. So is that more power through the Integrity Commissioner? That you want the Integrity Commissioner to have more power? Like right now, when we get a decision from the Integrity Commissioner, it comes back down to council to make the final decision, which in my estimation, I think the Integrity Commissioner should be given more power to say that's what should happen. This person should be, but it comes down to council. So in your letter, are you asking for the integrity commissioner to have more power to remove a councillor or a mayor?
Through you, Mayor, my personal opinion is that what the Integrity Commissioner out of Toronto has come up with makes the most sense, and that is to have that council shouldn't be dealing with these types of misconduct issues because it's taking an HR issue. Really, this is an HR complaint, right? And it's turning it into something political because you're having to decide on whether to reprimand a council member. Like, how awkward is that? I wouldn't want to be deciding on reprimanding my colleagues. So it's my opinion that we should be taking a very close look at what the Toronto Integrity Commissioner suggested for the Toronto Act and implement that for all municipalities across Ontario. That's my opinion.
Okay, I think you answered my question, and I wholeheartedly agree. I think we pay an integrity commissioner dollars to investigate, but when it comes down to council, unfortunately, we got councils that make decisions, and sometimes they sway one way and sway the other. And I'd like those integrity commissioners' rulings to be to come down to say this is what you need to do. You're removing a councillor or a mayor for 3 months or a month or whatever, and right now that doesn't happen. So I support your 100%.
Councillor Alstott?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Ellis, and through you to Nancy Cairns. I just wanted to thank you for the deputation today and all the great work you're doing on this front. And certainly it seems to me that it's pretty obvious that we should be held to the same level of accountability as other workplaces across the province, and I'll be supporting this wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Call the vote on that. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Greg Suds and Marilyn Laurie are here representing the Humane Society of Hastings Prince Edward to make a deputation to council. Welcome.
Thank you. Your Worship, Mayor Ellis, distinguished city councillors, and senior staff. My name is Greg Suds, and I'm the board chair of the Humane Society Hastings Prince Edward. It is a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak with you about HSHPE and its recent successes, as well as current challenges in caring for animals in need in our community. Marilyn Lowry, Executive Director responsible for the operations of HSHPE, will first provide an operational overview. Marilyn?
Thank you, Greg. I'd like to start by introducing you to one of the hundreds of animals currently in our care awaiting a new home. Sophie, a 2.5-year-old domestic short-hair cat, was brought to the shelter by animal control from a colony of unsocialized cats. After the 72-hour waiting period to allow strays to be claimed by owners, Sophie officially became our charge and we could begin to treat her. Had Sophie not been brought to us and had we not arranged and funded her spay, it is likely that she would have had 2 litters of kittens this year and every year thereafter for at least a decade. According to figures provided by SPCA and PETA, an unspayed cat like Sophie will give birth to approximately 12 kittens a year. In 3 years, Sophie and her 12 kittens and their offspring would have produced 70 cats. In 5 years, that number would grow to over 66,000, and in 7 years, Sophie and her offspring could number 370,000. Kittens, adolescents, adult cats roaming on the streets of Belleville, all from one unspayed cat. Last year alone, we spayed and neutered 532 cats, and I'm just going to let you do the math. Spaying and neutering is an essential service for the well-being of our community and our natural environment. And this is just one of the essential services that we provide to residents of the cities of Belleville and Quinte West and Hastings and Prince Edward counties. Since our inception 50 years ago, we have been caring for stray, surrendered, neglected, and abused animals. We return lost animals, we coordinate adoptions, provide medical care, promote spay-neuter services, educate the public about animal welfare. And if you want to, I know there are some appendices as part of your package, if you want to refer to Appendix 2 for a detailed financial breakdown from our 2022 audited statements. I want to dispute a myth that has been circulating in this community for years, that we are a kill shelter. We are actually classified as a low-kill shelter, meaning a shelter that euthanizes less than 10% of its animals. In 2022, we euthanized less than 4%, compared to Kingston Humane Society's 12.9. We do not euthanize for time or space, but for reasons such as animals who have posed a public health hazard, those who have congenital or hereditary conditions, and like so many of us who have had to make that brave choice with our very own pets, those animals whose quality of life is degraded due to disease or injury. Almost 1,700 live animals arrived at our doors in 2022. Some of these included 7 chickens, 3 parrots, a cockatiel, 1 muskrat, and a skunk. We receive animals in several ways, brought in by animal control under our pound contracts, strays that are brought in by the public, seized animals brought in by PAWS officers, Provincial Animal Welfare Services, and owner surrenders of their pets. Currently, we have municipal pound contracts with the City of Belleville, Quinte West, Brighton, Tweed, Sterling Rawdon, and Tyendinaga. These contracts involve receiving and impounding and holding any animal, including feral cats, reuniting owners with their lost animals, it's the best part of our job, finding suitable forever homes for unclaimed strays, ensuring all dogs released from the shelter are licensed, and humanely disposing of any deceased animals delivered by animal control. HSHPE helps animals in need, and as a community institution serves the people of this city and this region. Like many, we partner with the Ontario SPCA network, and our professionally trained staff work not only to care for animals in need, but to educate the public on animal welfare and best practices in pet ownership and care. These next 3 slides relate to the details again in Appendix 2. We chose the Peterborough Humane Society that has just completed a new build as of this July in 2023 as a comparative shelter. Of note on this slide is the fact that we cared for almost 100 more animals, but our cost of care was over $100 per animal at $8.24, lower. A comparison of revenue from Peterborough Humane Society and HSHPE clearly shows that we are heavily reliant on the generosity of our community to fund operations. 53% of our revenue last year came from donations, fundraising, and bequests, compared to Peterborough's 22%. And while Peterborough received 38% of its revenue from municipal fees and pound contracts, HSHPE received a total of 8%. Belleville contributes 4%, Quinte West 2%, and the other municipalities 2%. And again, refer to Appendix 2. As for 2022 expenditures, you will see that our wages and benefits are 18% lower than Peterborough's. We rely heavily on programs and fundraising to fund our operations. And the other category, for your information, is comprised of our bank charges, office and admin items, and amortization. Now, to update you on our current situation, I'll now throw the floor back to our board chair, Greg Suds.
Thank you, Marilyn. Excuse me. Over the past 12 months, HSHPE has seen a dramatic increase in the number of pets being surrendered by their owners. Not only is this number of animals arriving at the shelter on the rise, but the cost of caring for them is skyrocketing. The reasons for this perfect storm are multifactorial, including overall inflationary pressures on households, a tight housing market, dramatic increases in animal food and veterinary costs, a growing shortage of vets, and animals arriving are sicker and with more behavioral issues, making it more expensive and time-consuming to care for them and increasing their length of stay. At the end of our third quarter, our animal intakes are 23.2% above last year. If the trend is similar to the last quarter of 2022, we project a total of 1,967 intakes by the end of this year. Directly related to this is the increase in direct animal care costs that were up 59.3% at the end of our third quarter this year over last. HSHPE received $48,072 in revenue from our 2022 pound contract with the City of Belleville. That same year, we received a total of 279 animals brought into our care by Animal Control under our Belleville pound contract. These do not include the hundreds of strays and dogs found and brought to us by Belleville residents or those surrendered by their owners. The cost of care at $824 per animal totaled $229,896, representing a shortfall to HSHPE in 22 of $181,824. We expect the shortfall for 2023 to be significantly higher. For many years, HSHPE has been covering these funding shortfalls with donations and fundraising efforts, but with rising costs of care and donor fatigue in our community, this is proving increasingly challenging. While we posted $141,798 operating deficit in 2022, this is already almost doubled by the end of this third quarter. We're projecting a total operating deficit at year-end of over $553,000. We have operational funds in reserve. The timing on drawing down these funds is not clear at present, given the operational financial uncertainties, but we could foreseeably deplete our operational reserves in 2024. We are very thankful to the City of Belleville for your support of our new shelter build, which has included $400,000 in pledges, in-kind waiving of development and other fees, as well as our septic system. Also were the loan guarantees of $1 million, interest-free from the city's reserve. HSHPE only borrowed $664,000 of that $1 million for the construction of our new animal care and community education center. We are now paying $5,533 per month to the City of Belleville in loan repayments and $5,750, which includes interest to the City of Quinte West. That is $66,400 annually to the City of Belleville and $69,000 to Quinte West. Your $1 million loan guarantee from city reserves acted as a backstop, and this enabled us to proceed with our new build at a critical time. We are currently facing a new and very real threat to our ability to continue to provide the highest quality of service to the residents and animals of Belleville, Quinte West, and Hastings, Prince Edward. Faced with the unprecedented increase in demand and animal care costs, board members and staff at HSHPE are currently exploring options to address operating deficits, including a review of our current pound contracts. In light of these recent unprecedented capacity and cost pressures being brought to bear on HSHPE, we ask that the balance of the $1 million loan allocated be made available to us, and further that the loan be forgiven. Your support will allow us to respond to our new realities and work towards a sustainable financial model for our operations. Failure is not an option for this organization, and we're prepared to work with City Council and City staff towards a scenario where we can successfully continue our long history of service to the residents and animals of the City of Belleville. Thank you, Mayor Ellis and City Councilors, for your support. The City of Belleville has provided HSHPE and for your time today. As the late Bob Barker said, help control the pet population by having your pets spayed and neutered. At this time, we'd welcome any questions and comments that you may have.
Any questions? Councilor Wright Miller?
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I just have a few comments, and thank you very much for the presentation and for allowing us to have it in advance. I've made a few notes and just have some notes first before my questions. I think the public at large see this lovely new building and they think of, wow, we used to go to the old building and we'd walk through the maze of, and look at the pets and the cats and the dogs, the odd pig and chicken, and now we have this beautiful new building out there. What potentially could be wrong? But the reality is, based on the numbers and information you've provided to council and during this presentation, is the Humane Society is struggling to make ends meet and running a deficit in 2022 and a looming deficit in 2023. Not due to anything you're doing, but rising costs and the care costs for these animals. I was a bit shocked reading the statistics that were presented, and the lion's share of the revenues for the Humane Society still come from donations. And kudos to everybody that donates. You get 53% of all your revenues from donations. People who love animals and want to make sure there is a place where they can be looked after and cared for. In 2022, your report indicates these donations were made upwards of $664,000. That's a lot of money. It's wonderful, and they should all be commended for these donations. What I'm sure you don't want to happen is donor fatigue, which could very easily happen. It appears that your remedy to create revenue is currently limited without more help to be able to implement more in-house services like vet care or higher contract revenues. Is that a fair statement?
That would be, yes.
I would agree.
Okay. But what you have presented to us now is a breakdown of how you generate your funds to keep running. For instance, the city contributes 4% of the overall, our sister communities 4%, adoption and PAWS 30%, government grants and wage assistance 4%, the rest is just miscellaneous income and investment income. Not only is there a monetary donation that makes up the biggest part of this pie, but you have all these people that donate not only their time and their talents to the Humane Society, but this money. And I believe in our discussions, the people that donate their time is upwards to 300 people in your shelter. Is that true?
In fact, Councillor, our volunteer supervisor has trained 500 new volunteers throughout, since we moved into the new shelter. That's not including the 80 homes that are fostering animals right now for us, at least one animal, and also ancillary volunteers that jump on board for special events. We're so rich with volunteers.
Which is absolutely
We
fabulous.
couldn't run without them.
Absolutely. I think the question is, we have to think, what if we didn't have a Humane Society? What then? And I don't think any of us want to be in that position to think, what if we didn't have a Humane Society? This is the one place you just always feel will be there. So I think you're coming here looking to us for help, and it behooves us to work with you to get over these hurdles. Having said all this, can you explain to us and the public a little bit about how PAWS works and the long-term plans that you have for potential in-house services that have been anticipated to increase revenues but cannot be realized in your current climate?
PAWS, again, standing for Provincial Animal Welfare Services, they are entrusted with the investigations of, unfortunately, animal cruelty and neglect complaints. Prior to the year 2000, that was actually the auspices under the Ontario SPCA. But it went out of the shelters, and it's now run by an arm of the provincial government. So they will go in, if it's deemed the animal is indeed being neglected or abused, they will seize it, and then they will look to place it at various facilities, ours being one of them. I believe we have 5 dogs in right now. We've had them for a while, and we will keep them until such time as the court case is settled. Sometimes we get the animals signed over to us, so they become our property, and sometimes they go back if it's deemed that they have remedied the situation. The Huskies that we have right now, the 5 Huskies, we have had them for well over a year. We get paid by PAWS at $30 a day per animal. So it's, in some ways, the PAWS revenue helps to offset the shortfall in some of the animals brought in by animal control.
Thank you very much. And the pound contract, can you just enlighten us a bit how the pound contract is falling behind?
And if I may just add further to the PAWS, because I think this is important. We have no obligation to receive animals through PAWS. Basically, when PAWS is seeking the capacity, they'll look out throughout the province to find shelters that are available to place these animals in care during such time. One of the challenges we have, given the fact that we're already at capacity now, and have been for a good part of this year, is we're not able to accept pause animals when we already have a capacity issue because our pound contract trumps our intakes. So in other words, even though the pause contract would give us much greater revenue for the organization, we're limited in space because we need to make room and ensure that the animals coming to us through the city pound contracts have a place to go. So when we look at the pound contracts that we have, basically they just have not kept pace with animal costs. When we look at some of the slides that went through, our average cost per care of an animal coming through our organization is about $824. When you think that if it's a cat, I think our adoption costs are about $200 for a cat. That's deemed high compared to some of our other organizations that are adopting animals. My background's automotive, so if I look at it, if I were to equate animals to inventory, I would say, if you have a supply issue, you might offer a sale and try and reduce your inventory. The challenge there is that obviously increases our costs because it's less revenue coming through to the shelter. The other challenge it presents is we want to make sure that individuals coming in and adopting through the organization can actually care for these animals. So if the animal is too inexpensive to purchase, it sometimes presents a challenge because people adopting may not always look at the fact that can they afford the veterinary costs that go with this animal. So it's a bit of a challenge. The pound contract, though, ultimately is something that we're going to have to look at going forward. Today, our ask is for the loans. I was asked to chair this capital campaign a year or so ago, or a year and a half ago, and for me, the important part of the capital campaign for the Humane Society was the fact that this facility that was designed was not opulent. It was built to standards that provide optimal care, but it was not a monument to exaggerate the costs so that donors are funding extravagance. And so that was important to me as we go out to the community to raise funds. But I can tell you as the campaign chair, it's difficult. I mean, we have a very, very generous community, without doubt. When you look at the amount of money, 53% of our revenues are coming directly from donations. You're looking at about, I think in 2022, it was about $664,000. If we compare our revenue to that of Peterborough through donations, they were at about 270-some thousand, so quite a significant differential. And the concern is that at some point there's going to be fatigue. We just can't keep going at these levels as costs are going up. In 2022, we were at that level at 53% donor support in terms of revenues. What's that going to be for 2023? And what's it going to be going into 2024? There's a risk that those donor contributions can contract. As our costs are going this way, those pressures to raise funds consistently are going the opposite way. We are not the only nonprofit in this community that is worthy of support. There are many similar organizations that are all looking for donations. But I would stress this. I think it's critical that we understand the Humane Society is one of our community resources that really has little to no government funding, really at any level. So that's a concern, and that's part of the reason why we're here today, is that we can kind of look to the city and the city staff to maybe come up with solutions that may help us continue and do the things that we're doing as we go forward. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thanks, Marilyn and Greg, for the presentation, and sort of hear about the $553,823 deficit because the work you do in the community. I think the numbers speak for itself. 664,000. That's from the community giving back, so that's a big number, and that shows, I would think, the support that you have. Greg, you touched on the government's spending and support, and I did pull it here. So you get about 40% of the donations to make the Humane Society work, but the government, just want to kind of share this information, 0.6% from the government, towards grants to help you operate the Humane Society in a year. So another interesting thing was the pound dollars, 38% for Peterborough, and Belleville is 8%. I think you get 4%, 4 from Belleville, 2 from Quinte West, and then I think Marilyn, you said 2 from
Two for the smaller
smaller municipalities. Okay, just so we understand that. And the last thing, I guess, I got 2 questions for you. Maybe Marilyn and Greg, you can decide who's going to answer it. But with the new building, the partnership that you've developed with schools in Belleville with the Rescue Readers program, benefits to the animals and to the kids. I think that's that outreach in the community making a huge difference. And it's also exposing children, students, to what a Humane Society does and the value. And we know the value because if there wasn't any controlled spade or neutering the pets, you just touched on it. That's 300 and, I think you said 70,000 cats and 1 cat in Osprey. Like, think of that. So I want to know about the education, and I want to know if you, this is a great opportunity for you to explain the Humane Society with staff and volunteers and how that works on a daily basis. Kind of take us inside the work, not of the animals, but the people there and what they go through on a daily basis.
Okay, well, I'll be happy to answer that through the mayor to Councillor. Let me talk about the programs first. You mentioned Rescue Readers, and this has been a program that we weren't able to run in our dilapidated old shelter, but we've been bringing in, I think, a total of 36 different visits this past year.
Wow.
From schools, pathfinders, guides, Girl Guides, Embers. We also take our animals out to retirement homes, also to schools, and I think the retirement homes are one of my, well, 2 of my favorite things, because there was one fabulous picture of this, older gentleman. He was in a wheelchair, and he had this big white cat curled up in his lap, both sound asleep. And Christy Ballantyne, our volunteer program supervisor, is the one in charge of that. So it takes a lot of time and resource, but we want to expand these programs for sure. The other, one of the other programs we've got now is Seniors for Seniors. And that is where it was always kind of run on an ad hoc basis, but we've now, with the very kind sponsorship from Bayview Home Hardware, Chrissy and Adam Busher, they have enabled us to have any animal that is 6 years of age or older adopted by any human who is 60 years of age and older, and we're able to waive the adoption fee. So we've had, I think we've had 5 animals go out, and currently now we've got 2 animals in the shelter that qualify for that program. So we're very excited about that. And we work with the John Howard Society events that we do. We bring people into the shelter. We've got this beautiful new community room now. We had a small animal carnival, and that was because we had so many rabbits, a couple of guinea pigs, but many, many rabbits. So we held a carnival, and there were clowns, there were jugglers, it was phenomenal, and the place was packed. We also had a kitten shower. So think about baby showers, but this was with kittens. So we had kittens in the room, and one of our animal care attendants, our special needs kitten, Cornelius, who has a cleft palate, she was demonstrating tube feeding, and there was just this crowd of people, adults, children of all ages, crowded around her, which was very, very enlightening. In terms of the people, now Caitlin is one of 14 animal care attendants. There are 7 part-time and 7 full-time. They are the ones who directly work with the animals each and every day, 7 days a week. We don't go 24/7, but 8 a.m. till 5 o'clock. There are staff in the building. 8 to 12 is when they are all just working concertedly to get the public areas of the building clean, ready for when we open at noon. We are open from noon to 4:30 every day except Sunday. These are members of UFCW, Local 175. We also have 4 formidable staffers on the front lines. These are the people on the reception desk. It gets hopping in that shelter, no pun intended, or pun intended. We have our shelter manager, who is now in her 20th year. We have 2 shelter supervisors, and we have a customer service rep. And then in the back, there is myself, the capital campaign manager, volunteer and program supervisor, and a finance supervisor, along with 2 regular contractors, our marketing and communications manager, and our capital campaign assistant. We have to work like a well-oiled team. And I have seen Christy the other day. We weren't ready. It was about 11:45, and the small animal room still hadn't been done. Christy grabbed a volunteer, and she grabbed the pails and the shovels to muck them out. My very first Thanksgiving, we were very short-staffed on Thanksgiving Sunday, and I said, I'll volunteer to come in and do cat care. And so I did. I only forgot to put a litter box back in one kennel, and one kennel had 2 litter boxes. So, but Caitlin was checking me. So there's a lot involved, but as I say, the staff work very, very close in tandem, and there's so much more that we want to do, but we are hampered by lack of funds.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and through you to Marilyn and Greg. Thank you both for your presentation tonight and the great work that you continue to do with HSHPE for animal welfare in the community. And having examined the financial presentation that you brought for us today, I can see that really there's not a lot of room for cuts as it relates to staffing and some of these important elements that you have, because compared to your nearest comparators, whether that's Peterborough and Kingston, it is a very lean operation. There's not a lot of room on the cost side of it to really come up with any additional funds. So it really is a question of revenue. Certainly I appreciate that you brought up the pound contract. Can you remind us when is that contract expiring? When would that be available for renegotiation?
Belleville's pound contract expires December 31st, 2025.
2020. So we do have still some time to go on that, a little bit over a year. So that'll be good to see when that comes back up. But the question about the $1 million loan forgiveness is certainly something for us to consider. I think all of us around this table would consider the work that you do to be essential to the community, but certainly how we go about assisting with that is very important. So I'd ask my colleagues today if we could amend the motion that it be received and referred to staff for a report, so that we can see all options that are available to us and how best we can proceed on behalf of not only a great community organization, but also the taxpayer as well.
Thank you.
We appreciate your time. Thank you
for
so
your time.
much.
We appreciate it.
Correspondence, we have a letter from News Food Bank about the CP training letter, resolution that we received and refers to consent item 831, sent by Councilor Ossoff, second by Councilor Miller. All in favor, carried. We need a motion now that council rises and goes into the whole, take hear and consider reports, passing recommendations and resolutions with Councilor Chapman as chair, moved by Councilor Miller, Councilor Ossoff, all in favor, carried.
The agenda shall include under report items that warrant individual attention from councillor. 8A1, 2024 pre-budget approval of automated speed enforcement program. The resolution reads that pursuant to the General Manager of Transportation and Operation Services report number GMTOS-2023-29, that pre-budget approval for the 2024 operating budget in the amount of $327,000 be approved for the creation of an automated speed enforcement program in the city of Belleville, and that the funding be provided from the speeding enforcement ticket revenue. And that council approve that any net surplus, net deficit in brackets, from the automated speed enforcement program be transferred to, or in brackets from, the tax rate stabilization reserve fund. Could I get a mover? Thank you, Councillor Kelly, and a seconder, Councillor Thompson. And discussion? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. I just want to highlight And I'm gonna have, Manager, Mr. Reed speak on it. This program, we've been talking about at the Transportation Committee for a number of months, maybe years, trying to get this down. And it's come about because speeding has become a very big factor in our community. Whether it be in the rural area or the urban area, it's a concern. So what we're trying to do here now is the automatic speed enforcement. ASA is an automated speed system which uses a camera and a speed measurement device to detect and capture images of vehicles traveling in excess of the posted speed limit. It is designed to work in tandem with other methods and strategies, including engineering measures, education initiatives, traditional police enforcement, and focused on altering drivers' behavior to decrease speeding and increase safety. The province of Ontario authorized the use of AIS in municipalities to address ongoing issues with speeding in school zone and community safe zones, with the municipality collecting local data that indicates where speed is a factor. This data will be used as evidence and pinpoint where AIS can be implemented within our community. The images are reviewed by the provincial offense officer, and tickets are issued to vehicles owners regardless of who is driving. Upon eviction, the penalty is a fine. No demerit points are issued, nor is the registered owner driving record affected or impacted. So we've got down at this point in time 10 safety zones, and it's on the program here. And our hope in the future is to expand this to other areas, but right now we're legislated to just the safety zones. So we've eliminated here, and it also gives a rundown of the excessive speeds in some of these safety zones, and that's why we really have to bring this to our attention. And I commend the committee, which a couple of the members are here, Councillor Brown and Councillor Carr is on that committee. So I commend them for persevering with this through the peer, and I want to commend the staff for sticking with this. Manibus is recommending partnering with the City of Toronto. The cameras are designed to follow traditional speed enforcement. However, the ASL threshold speed to trigger a fine is not being made public at this time. This is a standard practice across the province. This program will be cost neutral and net surplus, and it's a very big move. But the one I want to really thank is Mr. Reed, and I'd like Mr. Reed to sort of stand up and maybe give his version of the process of this and what we hope to do as our city. Mr. Reed, can you sort of review this for me? Thank you.
Through the chair to Councillor Thompson. As we know, and I think all council members have gotten lots of calls about speeding over the years. This initiative has been derived through the Transportation Committee regarding the excess speeding in our community. Ultimately, there's 3 E's when it comes to reducing speed within our community. Engineering, complete streets, different aspects around there, traffic calming, education, and enforcement. And automated speed enforcement does align with the enforcement part of reducing speed in our community. Case studies have shown that once implemented, the speeding is reduced to 4% of what was there before. So we're hopeful to see some significant speed reductions in our community safety zones. And again, as I mentioned, this was derived from the Transportation Committee. We did implement a community safety zone policy. The committee had went through numerous streets that were candidates, and ultimately there was 10 streets and sections of road that met the criteria within our community safety zone. We have done the analysis before the implementation of the signage and the community safety zones and the afterwards. While there's been a slight amount of reduction in speeding in those zones, it obviously is not enough.
And if I may finish then, thanks, Mr. Reed. And this, if everything goes to plan, we hope to implement this July of next year. And we're only buying 4 cameras, but these 4 cameras are movable from one spot to another. So at this time, we only want 4. That may change in the future as we see, and maybe we get more safety zones and get the government to release more areas. And I want to apologize, Councillor Kelly is also on the Transportation Committee, and I apologize for not noting that he's a very valuable member. And we couldn't do without him. So that's, and I ask for your support to move this major project ahead, and certainly hope to be able to capture some of the speeding that is happening in our city in certain areas, and maybe in the future get to more areas. But speeding is a factor. The police are too busy to have a full force transportation committee on speeding, and they've asked us to look at this and help them in their concern of speeding. So I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Kelly, just quickly though, Councillor Carr, did you have your hand up earlier? I had you on a list, so that's why I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anybody. So Councillor Kelly first, then Councillor Carr.
Thank you, through you, Chair. To the Chair of the Transportation Committee, your apologies accepted. Thank you. I was insulted, but I appreciate you acknowledging the apology. Thank you. I'm part of the Transportation Committee, and as Councillor Thompson mentioned, 10 zones in the city. We see the big signs out when we're driving, and I think we're all guilty of having a heavy foot, some more so than others. And I just wanted to ask Mr. Reid, it's posted 40 right now. What is the threshold? Because to me, 0 tolerance. If it's 40, it's 40. What have you decided?
Through the chair to Councillor Kelly, that's a great question. But it's, unfortunately, those thresholds are privileged information and we do not want to make public. Again, the speed limit is 40 and that is the law, so we do encourage our residents to abide by the associated speeds.
And Councillor Carr?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, anytime, regardless of what the issue is, when we see pre-budget approval, we should kind of sit up and certainly pay attention. When we don't see the full picture, we're just adding to that pile. However, this has been ongoing work of the Transportation Committee from last term, and it's just taken a while for us to get to this point. I know that you know, there's a lot of staff work that has to be done, and particularly the back office. How are we going to gather evidence, and if there's prosecutions and things like that, it takes time to figure it out. And the fact that there's a partnership with the City of Toronto who has experience in this is great. And then obviously the timing of which we have to get this approval now so that we can get the system in place. I want to start by saying though, I've seen comments online, and anytime this comes up right away, it's just a cash grab for the city is what you see. I can say in the many years that I've been here, probably one of the major or the most significant amount of calls I receive, as probably everyone else around this table, is speeding. And we're limited as to what we can do. We refer the citizens to the Belleville Police to make complaint, but they're stretched. You know, it was disclosed during the Belleville Police public meeting by the chief that they had to suspend operation of their traffic unit for 3 months due to resources. The good part about it is the cameras never take a day off, and so they're reliable and can be there. Under the Highway Traffic Act, as was pointed out, they can only be placed in community safety zones, and we've found areas where there's a lot of vehicle pedestrian interaction, and therefore the need to make sure that people are complying with the law. The good part is that if you obey the speed limit, you don't get your picture taken and you don't get a ticket. So it's quite simple, actually. Last term, we did see a presentation from a particular contract with the cameras out of the city of Calgary. The cameras are advertised where they are, so it's not like a big mystery. And the expectation is that behavior or traffic behavior will be curbed. And
They saw tickets reduce, they saw speeding reduce. And that's at the end of the day what we want. So I think it has to be clearly said that we're not looking for revenue. There are other ways to get revenue. This here is about curbing speeding. So I certainly appreciate the work that staff have done to get us to this point, and I'll be supporting today's resolution.
Thank you. Councillor Enright Miller?
Thank you, Chair, through you, and I too will support this initiative, and thank you, staff, for all you've done. I just wanted to point out that for those of us that were in Lahr, Germany, had the benefit of visiting Lahr, they have these systems in place there, and a couple times we were being driven around, and I said to our driver, "What on earth are those tubes?" He said, "Well, that's the speed, the radar speed." And I said, "Are they effective?" And he said, "They're very effective." And you can tell by the way that they travel in their vehicles that they were effective on their streets. So I think it's a great thing, and other countries and municipalities have adopted it. I just had one question for Manager Reid, if I could. When people don't pay the fines, when they go to renew their license, is that when it would red flag them and they would not be able to renew, just like other source of tickets?
Yes, that's correct. It goes through the same process that any other tickets that's issued through the police service. It's registered against their driver's license, who's the registered owner, and then it would come up at renewal if they don't pay their fine. So.
Okay, thank you very much. And I do think this would be a benefit for our police services as well. And as you said, these don't take any time off, these systems. So, way to go.
Councillor Alsop?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And certainly this has been something that has been discussed for a long time, so much so that I was even happy to work on it during the last term of council when I was on transportation. So this has been discussed about for a while, and certainly sorely needed. You know, it seems that when I was younger, I felt that everyone was driving too slow. And now that I'm getting a little bit older and I've got kids and a wife and a dog and all those wonderful things, I started to realize how much faster people are driving than I'm comfortable with. You look at some of these stretches that we have here, and just for the people at home that maybe don't have the report handy, you look at Sydney Street from Tracy Street to College Street, posted 40, average speed 54, so almost 40% higher than the posted limit, max speed 115 kilometers an hour. And that's not an isolated incident. Canifton Road from College Street east to Bell Boulevard, 114. Harmony Road from Highway 37 to 449 Harmony Road, 109. So all of these different areas in our city that have been designated as community safety zones because of the presence of schools, businesses, houses. These are highly dense areas in most cases. People are going through their 60 and 70 and 75 kilometers an hour faster than the posted limit. And if you think about that stretch on Sydney Street, which is right near where my house is, there's multiple traffic lights in that area. And if you're going 75 kilometers an hour over the speed limit, there is no way you are getting stopped in time for some of those lights if you're hitting those speeds in between. So certainly I'm going to be supporting this. As has been mentioned by other councillors, I think bears repeating, this is not about generating revenue, this is about reducing speed. And if in the next 3 or 4 years this creates no revenue because no one's speeding, I think we'll all be a lot happier about that. So full support behind this, very glad to see this going through, and look forward to seeing safer streets for everybody.
Thank you for pointing those out. Anybody else? Call the question. All in favor? That is carried. 8A2, request for proposals, RFP-FIN- Okay, great, thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Alsop. Any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. 8A3, determining posted speed limits within rural city limits policy, ENG-2023-20-PDF. The resolution reads that council endorse the determining posted speed limits within rural city of Belleville limits policy. Can I get a mover? Thank you, Councillor Thompson. And a seconder, Councillor Enright Miller. Any discussion? Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, thank you very much. Again, it's as chair of the committee, and I'm going to call on Nicholas, to our engineering project manager, to explain more of this. But this is really came about because we have a lot of rural roads that's got no designated speed limit. And when they amalgamated Thurlow into Belleville, it really got a confusion part for the transportation committee and the speeding. So the main project objective is to establish a methodology to recommend appropriate travel speeds on rural roads within the city of Belleville. In 2020, 2020, we went for an RFP, it came in too high, so this was decided to do it in-house. And I can tell you, say, that the staff did a great job doing it in-house. The policy will allow staff to determine safe and appropriate speed limits on unposted roadways. The policy was presented to the Transportation Committee and then brought forward here. With council endorsement, staff can use the determining posted speed limits within rural city of Belleville limits. Policies determine the posted speed limits on unposted roadways within the rural limits of Belleville. And I'd like to call on Nicholas, if he may, to come up and maybe give a little briefing.
Yeah, Nicholas, that's fine. You can come on up to the podium. Thank you.
So Nicholas, did you understand what I would like for you to present?
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you.
So, through you, Chair, so the policy is developed, as Councillor Thompson spoke to there, to determine limits on roads in the rural areas where there's presently no posted speed limit. So through the amalgamation in '98, all these roads were deemed 50 under the Highway Traffic Act. Previous to that, they were 80-kilometer-an-hour zones, which generated lots of confusion for motorists as well as at ticketing time for speed infractions. So the purpose of this policy is to kind of assign safe and appropriate speed limits. So we recognize that these roads were designed for 80-kilometer-an-hour travel for the most part. So we kind of enacted a policy that will set a path forward to consistently analyze all these roads. So the policy takes into consideration key data such as development in the area, population, the width of the road, the surface of the road, speed data, so how people are actually using the roads, the 85th percentile speed, and things of that nature. And then the policy will determine a speed, we'll review the speed, and usually this is done over a few kilometer sections of road between intersections. And then based on the results, we'll recommend a speed further, and then that'll be enacted. So the goal of the policy is to assign speed limits for all of the unposted roads in Thurlow. We reviewed a few already. They've been fully presented. We discussed them at the Transportation Committee, and the goal is to post all unposted speed limits over time, and move forward with that to hopefully get some safer operating speeds in the Thurlow Ward and our rural areas.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion, any questions? I'll call the question, all in favor? That is carried, thank you. Moving on to consent items. Council may adopt consent items by one motion, but prior to consideration of such motion, members may request that specific items be removed from consideration under such motion, and council shall consider such items individually. I'll go around the table to ask if anybody would like anything pulled, starting with Councillor Thompson.
I pull 8B, 8, 9, and 10. And it's all on transportation, that's why I'm pulling them.
And Councillor Carr?
No, thank you.
Councillor Enright Miller?
No, thank you.
Councillor Alsop?
No, thank you.
Councillor Brown?
8B10.
8B10. That's already been pulled? Yeah, okay. And
thank you.
Mayor? Councillor Kelly?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so with the exception of 8B8, 8B9, and 8B10, oh, sorry, the consent items be approved with the exception of 8B8, 8B9, and 8B10. Can I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Alsop, and seconded by Councillor Enright Miller. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So moving forward to 8B8, the amendment to traffic bylaw number 12967. The resolution reads that a bylaw to approve and authorize an amendment to bylaw number 12967, being a bylaw to regulate traffic within the corporate limits of the Corporation of the City of Belleville for the addition of a no-stopping zone on a portion of Sunningdale Drive outlined in report number ENG-2023-18 be prepared for council's consideration. Councillor Thompson, did you want to move that? And then I need a seconder. Thank you, Mayor. And any discussion?
Just a briefing on, this is on Sunningdale Drive, and really what it came about is there's a, that roadway, there's a car dealership, and the transport that delivers cars obstructs the traffic on that street during loading, so we're going to post it that there's no stopping on that section, basically to get the transport to go into the dealership and unload. So that's really the only reason it's here. Thank you.
Any further discussion on that item? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And 8B9, amendment to traffic bylaw number 12967. The resolution reads that a bylaw to approve and authorize an amendment to bylaw number 12967, being a bylaw to regulate traffic within the corporate limits of the Corporation of the City of Belleville for the elimination of on-street parking on a portion of Thrasher Road, outlined in report number ENG-2023-19, be prepared for council's consideration. And again, Councillor Thompson, did you want to move that?
Yep.
And seconded by Mayor. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, and again, this is Thrasher Road, and what's happening is that because of the Frank Center being there, and now there's a, to go into the Frank Center, you have to pay to parking, and what's happening is that people are using Thrasher Road now for parking, and it's causing a problem with, if anything was to get down there, ambulance, fire ever had to get in there when they're lined up along the side, so we've been asked to restrict parking on Thrasher Road on both sides, basically just because of that reason.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. On to 8B10, amendment to traffic bylaw number 12967. The resolution reads that a bylaw to approve and authorize an amendment to bylaw number 12967, being a bylaw to regulate traffic within the corporate limits of the Corporation of the City of Belleville for the addition of speed regulations on Zion Road, as outlined in report number ENG-2023-17, be prepared for council's consideration. Councillor Brown, did you want to move that? Yes, and Councillor Thompson seconded. So Councillor Brown, did you want to go first?
Thank you. I wholeheartedly support this amendment. This is an issue that has been circulating between residents in the Zion Road and Hill Street area and the city since 2017. Even though that what this is recommending was contrary to what we saw under the posted speed signs we just approved, we felt it was important to acknowledge that this particular area was a focus around children's safety. It is the onboarding and egress of children from the school bus. It's on a blind curve, and what has been experienced over the course of months, certainly since the day I got elected, I've been hearing about it from the residents in that area, is that the confusion between Thurlow before 1998, when the speed limit was 80, and post 1998, when the speed limit became 50, the residents, many of them long-time residents, just couldn't deal with the 50, and they essentially were doing a speed of 80 or higher. What really brought it to fruition, and I thank the Transportation Committee for this one, was as children were getting off the school bus and were about to cross the road, a dump truck came around the blind corner at significantly higher speed. Well, he said he was doing 80. We suspect it was much, much higher, and was unable to stop in time for the school bus that was there with the arm extended. And luckily, the adults were waiting and were able to pull the children back. The driver, by the way, did come back to the families to apologize, so I want to acknowledge that. But what this will accomplish is from matching up existing speeds from Old Madoc Road to just after where the school bus change will happen, then a transition from the 50 zone 60, because you have to provide a transitionary period, and then the remainder of Zion Road will continue on at the 80 kilometers an hour that people are accustomed to. So I thank you for the opportunity, giving you a little bit of backstory. It's very, very important to the residents in this area, and I think it's something that's I hope you will support. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Thompson?
No, very well said by Councillor Brown, and I do want to mention that Councillor Carr brought this to the transportation meeting a couple of times, even last year, concerned with Zion Road. So it was a while getting it to it, but it has a reflection back on the last item that we passed, 8A3, where we can determine posted speed limits. With that technology that we have now, this makes it easier. And there is a map provided for you where the 80, the 60, and the 50 is. So it's a good move. It's a safety zone, and I thank Councillor Brown for explaining it very well.
Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you, that is passed. Down to council information matters. Council may adopt consent items by one motion, but prior to consideration of such motion, members may request that specific items be removed from consideration under such motion, and council shall consider each item individually. So going the other way, Councillor Kelly, do you have anything you'd like to
No, thank you.
And Mayor?
8C2I.
8C2I. Thank you. And Councillor Brown?
No, thank you.
Councillor Alsop?
No, thank you.
Councillor Enright Miller?
No, thank you.
Councillor Carr?
8C1B, please.
8C1B. And Councillor Thompson?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oops, sorry. That the agenda items be received with the exception of items 8C1B and 8C2. What? Sorry? I? Sorry. Can I get a mover? Thank you, Councillor Carr, and a seconder, Councillor Enright Miller. And all in favor? Thank you. That is carried. So 8C1B, Councillor Carr, did you want to move that? And a seconder, please. Councillor Brown. And go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have spoken on this matter time and time again, just regarding building totals, but and particularly housing. But I want to kind of expand it a little bit. What I'd actually like to do is receive it and have an amending motion that staff prepare a report for council outlining a public-facing tracking system for all steps in housing approvals. And I'll speak to that amendment.
It's a friendly amendment, or do you agree with that? Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And the reason why I want to point it out is, so for the period of January to September, our Building Services Department is showing 295 units here. And interestingly enough, and I know we've had a lot of discussion about the Building Faster Fund and things that the province is rolling out almost on a weekly basis. And they rolled this program out, and interestingly enough, when they introduced strong mayor powers to ours and other municipalities, there was a comment in the letter to the mayors that we're working on the framework for the Building Faster Fund, and we'll get it out in due course as we consult. Well, interestingly enough, they do have a tracking system now that's available to the public. And as of October 25th, tracking housing targets, Belleville has a 2023 housing target of 227 units, and we're currently sitting at 144. So we're 63% towards our progress as of October 25th, with obviously the end of the year coming fast and furious. So as it stands, like many other municipalities, we're not meeting the housing target that's laid out by the province, and therefore we won't have access to the Building Faster Fund, however the size of the allotment is. And the real issue comes down to the fact that the province is using CMHC definition for their housing start. And it's defined as the beginning of construction work on a building where the dwelling unit will be located, and can be described in two ways. The stage when the concrete has been poured for the whole of the footing around the structure, or an equivalent stage where a basement will not be part of that structure. So in other words, when builders build, then that will count towards our totals which then impacts our funding. And so the reason for my amendment, as you can see from our totals, we are much higher than what the province has recorded, because we're using a different framework and metric in which to demonstrate what's getting completed. And like I've said many times, and I appreciate council support in the past, we can only control what we can only control. And if we're being scored on when builders build, there's a clear demonstration. If footings aren't in the ground, we could be falling short. Having said that, there's the new long-term care facility that had sod turning. They're well on their way. I drive by there all the time. I remain hopeful that they can get some footings in the ground, because the province has indicated long-term care will be included in those totals. But again, to have to count on their actions in order to get funds is problematic. So the other side of it too is that I think that you know, there's always a lot of finger pointing, like I've said before, and I think a public-facing tracking system to know who's responsible for any delays along the way, and when it is the city, you know, we'll point our finger at ourselves. But if it's one of those things where information from the city goes back out, and planning committee sees this a lot, where we've got some proposed developments that are stalling because of MTO comments that we're waiting on, then the applicant gets them back, and then back to MTO. And then meanwhile, the city sits along the sidelines waiting for that to occur, and yet we're being counted on whether a foundation goes in. So I think we need to have a tracking system to be able to then demonstrate, so when we're advocating at AMO, or the mayor can speak to the minister, at least we have the ammunition, if you will, to say this is how we need to be scored. Score us on our performance. Simple as that. And then what's worse is that if they're using the CMHC totals, the question becomes, well, when was that total caught in terms of their counting? So perhaps maybe CMHC totals now are looking back to August or July, but then the province is just reporting to October. So the metrics and the framework, like everything else that seems to have rolled out with this Building Faster Fund and the strong mayor powers, is broken, and really needs to be calibrated on what we do. Thank you.
Any further comments? I'll call the question on the amended vote. All in favor? Thank you. That is carried. And on to HC2I. To support the call of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario for the Government of Ontario to introduce legislation to strengthen municipal codes of conduct and compliance with them in consultation with municipal governments, and that the legislation include accountability for workplace safety and harassment, flexible administrative penalty regime, increased training of municipal integrity commissioners, allow municipalities to apply to the judiciary to remove a sitting member if recommended, prohibit a member so removed from sitting for election in the subsequent term. So that is moved by Mayor Ellis. Can I get a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Enright Miller.
So basically, it's the same motion that we supported with Nancy Karen, so I just wanted to make a point of that and further vote with Hastings County on this one.
Excellent, thank you. Any further discussion on this? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Rise and report. So I just have to say that? I need a motion to rise and report. Thank you. That's Councillor Alsop and Councillor Enright Miller. And all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, we'll start with bylaws. I need a motion for first reading of bylaws. Bylaw 2023-188, 189, 190, 191, 192, 193, 194, 195, 196, and 197. Moved by Councillor Chatton, Councillor Enright Miller. All in favor? Carried. Second reading and discussion of bylaws 2023-149, 188, 189, 190, 191, 192, 193, 194, 195, and 196. Moved by Councillor Carr, Councillor Kelly. Discussion. All in favor? Carried. Third and final reading of bylaws 2023-149, 188, 189, 190, 191, 192, 193, 194, 195, 196. Moved by Councillor Alsop, second by Councillor Chatton. All in favor? Carried. New business. Does anybody have some? Actually, I've got a lot here, so I guess I'll just start with me and get it over with here. I need a motion for the Belleville Agriculture Society lease agreement amendment, that bylaw number 2023-199 being a bylaw to approve and authorize the execution of an amendment to the lease agreement between the corporation of the City of Belleville and Belleville Agriculture Society be read a first, second, and finally read and passed a third on this 14th day of November 23rd. Councillor Ossop, Councillor Enright Miller, all in favor? Carried. New business is the Belleville Farmers Market Holiday Pop-Up Market Memorandum of Understanding, that the Belleville Farmers Market Holiday Pop-Up Market Memorandum of Understanding be approved and bylaws be prepared for council's consideration. Moved by Councillor Ossop, Councillor Chatton, or yes, Councillor Chatton. All in favor? Carried. And I have a motion here that hopefully will support. It's about provincial recognition of homelessness as a crisis. Whereas the homelessness crisis is taking a devastating toll on families and communities, undermining a healthy and prosperous Ontario. And whereas the homeless crisis is the result of an underinvestment and poor policy choices of successive provincial governments. And whereas the homeless require a range of housing, social service, and health solutions from government. And whereas homelessness is felt most at the level of local municipalities and the residents they serve. And whereas municipalities are doing their part but do not have the resources, capacity, or tools to address this complex challenge, and whereas the leadership and urgent action is needed from the provincial government on an emergency basis to develop resources and implement a comprehensive plan to prevent, reduce, and ultimately end homelessness in Ontario. Therefore, it be resolved that the City of Belleville calls on the provincial government to immediately acknowledge that homelessness in Ontario is a social, economic, and health crisis, commit to ending homelessness in Ontario, work with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario and a broad range of community, health, and Indigenous and economic partners to develop resources and implement an action plan to achieve this goal. And further, that a copy of this motion be sent to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Minister of Children, Community and Social Services, Minister of Health, Association of Ontario Municipalities, the Honourable Todd Smith, Member of Provincial Parliament for Bay of Quinte, and the Honourable Rick Breeze, Member of Provincial Parliament for Hastings, Leadington, and Addington. If I could get it moved by Councillor Chatton, Councillor Brown. Anybody like to speak to the motion? Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for bringing this motion forward. We spend a lot of time talking about homelessness and health, and when we do and the province doesn't, then suddenly it becomes our issue. And you know, I guess I can't say it any other way. I'm growing tired of seeing us try to manage this, and I mean us as a society, manage it on 4-year election cycles. And that really is what it comes down to. It's spend a little bit of money, hold money back, wait for an election, spend a bunch of money, rinse and repeat. And while that's happening, people are falling off of the housing spectrum. They're falling through the cracks of our healthcare system. I've talked about the continuum of care when it comes to mental health in every community, and the fact that many people who don't have the supports go into crisis, they go in the hospital, 72 hours later the hold is off, out the door you go, and there's no continuum of care. Healthcare and housing are two primary responsibilities of the province, and as your motion that you brought forward here clearly states, they have two large ministries, two large bureaucracies that are there in order to serve the people of Ontario, and that's what they need to do. And while we've seen an increase in funding, and I went on the Hastings County Committee website, and the Homelessness Prevention Program annual allocation from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, $6.1 million for the next 3 years. That's great, but what results is that achieving? And if it's not achieving to end homelessness, then the result is that it's coming up short. The other issue is related to healthcare, and again, like I've said, many people are falling through the cracks. It's time that we stop celebrating food banks. I see too many of our members of provincial parliament going in and singing the praises of food banks. Food banks is a failure. That if people cannot afford food, then that is a failure on society in terms of providing them the necessary supports. And that doesn't take away from the important work that they're doing, because what they're doing is they're trying to fill a gap where income supports are not staying up with inflation. And at the end of the day, this all is attributable to significant health costs. And now what we're seeing is a shift from public funded health care to private health care, and it's getting away from us very quickly. And so, you know, I know we all receive calls, and I know there'll be a lot of discussion on this. But as I've said to many people, we can do our part with the limited resources we have, but this is not our primary place of jurisdiction. We could quadruple property taxes and start funding for more affordable housing and assist with income supports, but that's not our jurisdictional role. And so I think it's important that we stay in our lane. So as I've said many times to constituents that reach out to me, you have to speak to our members of provincial parliament. We have two because the ridings split into our city, and we need both Mr. Barizi and Minister Smith to do their part to advocate for our community. But when we see people struggling on the street, not having enough to eat, and falling through the cracks of healthcare, that's a provincial responsibility, and it's time that they act and they look beyond a 4-year election cycle and actually try to make a difference in our community. So I'll be supporting this motion wholeheartedly.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm in full support of this motion, and I thank you, Councillor Carr, for addressing it from a slightly different perspective than I will. The province will tell us that they are doing everything they possibly can. More dollars to service managers, the 6.1 million, increasing the number of mental health and addictions beds in hospitals. That was a quote that I heard yesterday morning. But what isn't being acknowledged is that the costs are being downloaded to the municipalities. That we're struggling to address the impacts to our community, and we're doing it without financial resources. And when I talk about that it's being downloaded is what's not being acknowledged. We've had 3 major fires in as many months that our fire and emergency services have had to deal with, including with Belleville Police support, with partner support from other city partner agencies, with our paramedics. All were deemed suspicious and probably, without certainty, but probably related to the homelessness situation that we are experiencing here in Belleville and across the province. We had 90 opioid overdoses that required the response from our fire, from our police, and from our paramedics, along with our Welcoming Streets team. Children's Safety Village mentioned yesterday that during their Halloween event, they had to have BPS on site during the event so that the police department could secure over 100 used needles during the event. We as a municipality are making investments in locations that, and I quote, a quote from our MPP, one of our MPPs, investments in locations that are viewed as being more appropriate in another part of town. We are making investments in overnight security. We are making investments in Welcoming Streets in order to address the increasing break-ins, thefts, and vulnerable population who find themselves in and around the downtown triangle, that being the Terminal, Bridge Street United Church, City Hall, and the downtown core. Not to mention our staff, and our thanks to our staff for the number of cleanups that they have to do every single day along the waterfront trails and the encampments to ensure the safety and health of everyone, including the vulnerable population. And when posed, how does our MPP respond to this? When on a local talk radio show yesterday, when asked, the response was, other municipalities are way worse circumstances than we are here in Belleville. I was shocked. And I say shame on our MPPs if they think it's okay here in Belleville because it's worse somewhere else. That doesn't solve the problem. And when really pressed on what the province is or will do, the second response was, no way that we provincially are going to have the institutionalization discussion. And to this, despite the clear need for better and more institutional type services, healthcare solutions, detox centers, mental health care, more social housing. All of these things are all institutionalized services. So in my opinion, and I hope an opinion that's supported by all of us, it is time for the province and our local MPPs to recognize the true cost of supporting the vulnerable population, whether it be here in Belleville or in any one of the 440 plus municipalities across Ontario. That what they're asking us to do and support with the dollars that they're giving us are solutions that are just not working. Perhaps it's time for our provincial reps, our MPPs and their staff to actually sit down with municipalities across Ontario, but here in Belleville, to understand the actual impact of their choices, what they're telling us we can invest in, and making sure that they understand what the impact is to us as a municipality. Increasing costs to the city, to our residents, and to the very social fabric of our municipalities. As I said, I am in full support of this motion, and I hope the province is listening. Thank you.
Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Outside of council, I have two other hats that I wear. One of them is as a security guard, and one of them is as a worker for Canadian Mental Health Association. Because of those two hats that I wear, I get to speak with the homeless population weekly. And because I have that insight into what their circumstances are and often what is lacking in their lives, I'm acutely aware that there are services and resources that are being offered to them that they do not want. The province absolutely has to call on this as an epidemic. We have to take some kind of action. And of course, the detox center that was talked to us, we were privy to the chief of police talking about a detox center, a 90-day detox center coming to Belleville. That is imperative to be able to address the homelessness issue, because unfortunately we have a three-tier issue with homelessness: addictions, mental health, and the unhoused. So while not everybody that's unhoused has addictions issues, the ones that do have addictions issues that are out on the street right now are not seeking help and not using the resources that are being offered to them, are actually often rejecting any of the resources that are being offered to them. And until we have some solid institutional answer to the addictions issue, we're going to continue to see unhoused people. We're going to continue to see the collateral damage in policing and our fire services being out on the street trying to address things that don't need to be addressed if that addictions issue is addressed. So that's my thoughts on it. I just wanted to make sure that it was out there that we're not just dealing with unhoused or homelessness. We do need to go further than that, in my estimation, and calling on the province to help us fund a detox center would be an incredible leap towards the right direction. So I will also be supporting this motion.
Anybody else? Councillor Alsop?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And as many of my colleagues have addressed, this issue affects us in multiple different ways at the municipal level. And I want to thank you for asking the province to declare this a crisis. Because at the municipal level, there's no discussion about what we should be calling it. We recognize that it's a crisis because we see it every day. We see it every day, even just down the street from here. People on the street, people using drugs in public, people overdosing. As was referenced earlier, our EMS and paramedic services had to respond to 90 overdose calls between November 1st and November 7th, the first week of November. That has a huge amount of strain across the entire system because police are also responding, fire is also responding. This is a massive challenge. And not only for people that find themselves on the street. I think if you could fix the problem for the unhoused population, you could fix it for a lot of other people as well. A lot of folks are suffering from mental illness. A lot of people are suffering from addiction. The housing epidemic that we have in this country is unbelievable. You know, people that are my age have no hope of ever getting a home. And if you can't secure your housing, good luck ever finding a way to retire as well. So this is a problem that stems not just from the homeless community, but all the way up through our community and through people at all different education levels, finance levels. And so this is something that really needs to be addressed. You know, the comment that was made the other day that the problem's not so bad in Belleville is because it's worse somewhere else. Well, if I say, well, this leak in my roof isn't so bad because I have a worse leak somewhere else, you have to fix the whole roof. And that's what's not being addressed here. That you need to fix it in that community, you need to fix it in this community, and you need to fix it in every other community across this province that is struggling with this issue, because all of us are, and we do not have the resources to do it on our own. Even some of the provincial funding that flows into different organizations that attempt to address the situation as well is too often too little, and always changes depending on what the budget cycle looks like for the next year. So a program that's effective may be cut the following year because the funding envelope just isn't there. And when you have these starts and stops and fits and spurts, you will never be able to properly address this problem, and we need the province to step up and do their job.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Kelly?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, I'm glad that you are bringing this motion forward. I applaud you for this. You know, this is my 5th year on council, and it seems like we've been having this conversation for the last 5 years. It just goes around and around and around. And thank you for the passion and compassion for those that are experiencing homelessness. Last week I was at a press conference. The chair of the police board, Councillor Alsop, Mayor Ellis there, first responders, health individuals that are leaders in our community, and that number 90. 90. And then I was at an EMS meeting last week, chaired by Councillor Thompson, and the stress on the paramedics. At one point at BGH, there was 10 ambulances there. I spoke to a doctor, the stress of that emergency room, the nurses, anybody that was coming in for another health situation. It was chaotic. 90. Think of that number, 90. And I had a conversation with Chief Mike Callahan from the Belleville Police Service, and I could see it in his eyes and hear it in his voice. He told me he's up at night trying to come up with solutions, and he's not alone. And he's been a frontline police officer for probably 35 years. It has its effect on those that are working with the homeless, and think of their families and the business community and everybody involved in our city. We see it, we hear it. This has been 5 years, and it's really frustrating because nothing has changed. Same as it was last month and the month before, and it seems to be getting progressively worse. We get the emails and the phone calls from people. You know, it was brought to my attention that one of the MPPs in Toronto said that they only get 1 call a week about the situation in Belleville. Well, I'm here to tell you, and I think I'm speaking for the team, that's not our world. That is not our world. Anyway, I'll leave it at that, and thank you.
Just want to make a comment on that, Councillor Kelly. I was mayor from 2006 to 14, 8 years, and I can't think off the top of my head that I had 1 call on homelessness in those 8 years. I went away for 8 years and I come back, and it's safe to say I probably get anywhere from 1 to 6 calls a day on it. And when I look at it, I've always surrounded myself with good people, smarter people than I am, and we've been able to solve a lot of issues in this city and a lot of issues in life. But I don't have solutions for this unless we have the province, the federal government, and all levels of government helping us and leading this charge. Because it's not a made in Belleville issue, it's got to be a made in Ontario issue, and not even a made in Canada issue. But in 8 years, what has happened? 200 homeless we have approximately now. 8 years ago, they didn't exist. We need to look at that. Anybody else on this? Councillor Thompson?
Just very quickly, I like where it's finally coming to fruition that we need institutions. I brought this up not long ago, and I had people come to me and say, what do you need? Why would you need institutions? These isn't institutions to lock people away. These are institutions to get people help, because our hospitals do not have enough staff, do not have enough rooms. We need institutions to deal with the mental health issues in Canada and Ontario, and I hope that you have institutions in your motion. If it isn't, I would ask that you refer more to institutions or dealing with the mental health, because that's the problem with our homelessness, that's the problem with our housing. But if we don't deal with and get some institutions, they did away with them many years ago, the provincial government, and guess where we are today? Back in the same situation then, and they say they didn't need them. Guess what? That's part of the problem today. If we don't solve that, we're not going to solve the housing. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Enright Miller?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the motion, and thank you all my colleagues for your eloquent comments. And I think you've said it all around the table, and anybody listening, that this is a problem. We have an epidemic, and none of us know how to solve it. And I think we all know our phones ring off the hook, our emails are full. The people of Belleville and surrounding area, they want us to try to fix this, and we don't have a fix, and we need help. So thank you for the motion, and I think we need to keep the pressure on once this motion goes out, and I think we need as much help as we can get. And I think this team, if we can stick together and try to keep pressure on, we can maybe get some results. So thank you.
Okay, with that, I think everybody's spoken on it. I'd call the vote. All in favor? Or motions at all? Councillor Kelly?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Well, I'll do a little bit of the setup. A few weeks ago, Councillor Thompson was away in Germany on assignment. I was asked to go to pinch hit for him at Hastings County Social Services, and it was a very engaging meeting. And then this past week, I was filling in for Councillor Alsop, and that's such a wonderful committee, and the work that they do, and the difference that they can make in a community is amazing. So I really enjoyed the experience. And at the meeting that I pinched hit for Councillor Thompson, the topic of the warming centers came up. So I want to do some education pieces tonight. The warming centers, they're not shelters. There are 3 in Hastings County, one in Belleville, Quinte West, and Bancroft. And I've had numerous conversations with the Chief Administrator Officer of Hastings County. He's new at the position, Connor Dory. The nightly cost for all 3 warming centers for Hastings County is $4,979.14. To zero in on Belleville, it's just over, I think for the week, it's close to $5,000. So $35,000 a week for all 3. That's the cost to run all 3. They're open from 8 to 8, just like they were last year. But the challenge was at the meeting, it said it's opening on December the 15th. So I had worked hard with Councillor Thompson to move the needle from the -10, that was the temperature before, to open up a warming center in Belleville. It was set at -10, then it was -5. To Councillor Thompson, myself, and others, we thought it was ridiculous. I mean, how cruel can we be when you have to hit a certain temperature to let somebody go in the winter? Doesn't even make sense, but that's what it was. So 3 warming centers for Hastings County. Councillor Carr touched on it. The budget for homelessness programming funding for Hastings County is $6.5 million. They have 4 guidelines in the program. They are emergency shelter, so we have the Grace Inn, or if somebody needs to go to a hotel, that's emergency shelter. There's supportive housing, community outreach, working directly with the homeless, and then there's the housing assistance program. If you're behind, you're paying your rent, they'll top it up there, and on occasion they'll pay, if it need be, first and last month's rent. So that's where that $6.5 million helps programs. The province did give some social services relief funding during the pandemic, but those have since stopped and they've been kind of shuffled into this $6.5 million. So if you look at the Hastings County Annual Report, Mr. Dory says there has been success, meaningful progress, accessed services. Individuals decide on the program being offered. It's not like it's mandatory that they have to go. They sign up basically to go to these. In Hastings County, in their report just released not too long ago, there are 166 identified, consented to work with the agencies. So 166 homeless, and the numbers, they didn't have them for me, but what is the percentage that would consent to work with the agencies offered? So at the Belleville Warming Center last year, 222 guests the average was 46 guests per night at the warming center. 30 only stayed. Only 3 attended 50% or more. And the warming center was open for 106 nights, 106 nights. Quinte West, their average night was 6 people. 3 regular guests attended 50% of the time. Then you have Bancroft is yet to be open. They don't have a facility yet, and they're still working with that community to make it work. So it's $35,000 a week. I think it comes in close to $300,000 from December 15th to March 31st. The cost to the city of Belleville for the warming center last year was $220,000 for 106 nights. $220,000. So I asked Mr. Dory to kind of give me the lay of the land for those that end up on the streets. Well, a lot of the times, as Councillor Chatton discussed earlier tonight, it's not always an addiction or a drug issue. Sometimes it's just they can't do it financially. So I asked about this Ontario Works program in Ontario, and the province gives $497 to an individual a month. The shelter allowance is $390. So if you do a quick search today to get a 1-bedroom room, small little bachelor apartment, pretty tough picking to find something. How do they live? That's why people choose a car, because they still get the $390 for the shelter allowance, and the basic need allowance of $343. They're no further ahead. They can't live. Then they got to buy food and clothes and other stuff. It's ridiculous. 76% of the homeless in Belleville are on social assistance. So that comes back to that $497 a month. 8% are seniors, and 4% report no income. So I don't know how people do it. I said to Mr. Dory, what do we got to do? Because we've been talking about this for years. We need more from the province, and the federal funding today, according to Mr. Dory, is extremely weak. It's limited. We just need more money. We need an increase. So I want to make a motion, and hopefully I'll get a seconder and the support of my colleagues, that we send a letter to Hastings County, no disrespect to their team, that is it possible to get the warming center in Belleville open as soon as possible. And if it can be by the 1st of December, maybe they can structure a meeting by phone or do a poll that way with the members of that committee, because it's embarrassing and it's cruel. It's cruel to not have a place for 150 plus in Belleville to go at night on November the 14th, where the temperature might get down to -3. And they're cold and they're damp. I don't need to tell you about the weather elements. It's cruel. So I'd like to make a motion that City of Belleville send a letter to Hastings County that they will find the funding or work towards opening up the warming center in the City of Belleville before the set date for December 15th.
Seconded by Councillor Thompson. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Any other motions? Councillor Brown?
Sorry, I was going to speak to.
Oh, okay, sorry. You can still speak to it, so.
Thank you. I just want to offer a bit of insight into the motion. A similar motion was put forward by Quinte West to move their start date from the warming center from December the 15th to December the 1st. It was defeated by the Community and Human Services Committee, so I just want to make us aware of that. What they did offer Quinte West, and it was also declined by the city, was if they wanted to start December 1st, the timeline would have to end March the 15th instead of March 31st. So that wasn't acceptable either. And I just wanted to clarify that because I don't believe Councillor Kelly was at that particular meeting. So I think if we're going to put this forward, then I think it would behoove us that we give our Quinte West colleagues a heads up that we're coming forward with this particular request because they've already tried and were not successful. Thank you.
Sorry about that, Councillor Brown. Thank you. And we will get a letter to Matt. The clerk will send a letter to their clerk in Quinte West. And I can phone the mayor. We can go together. So, any other motions? Seeing none. Announcements. We have a few. Councillor Thompson, we'll start on this side.
Got one big announcement. After all the doom and gloom that we've done tonight, we have a special celebration on Friday night. Festival of Lights starts at 5 o'clock. The mayor will be there at 6. Then he has to go to an event for the Salvation Army. We have entertainment by Shirley Diane. They'll be welcomed by myself. And for the first time in Belleville, we'll have a drone display. So it's scheduled, and Councillor Enright Miller, I want to commend, she's on that committee, been a big help in it. The drone display is scheduled hopefully around 7 o'clock, first time in Belleville. We last year, they had the fireworks, so we thought we'd try something different, so we're going with the drone display. We have photo ops and donors sometime around 7:15. Then we hope to do the light display at 7:30. We hope to have a couple of the sponsors. We'll say a few words during that evening. We have 2 food vendors slated for that night. One of them is the Gators and the other one is Pink Funnel Caterers. Also will be there for the first time. And the big event is really everything is going to be at Myers Pier this year. Other years they've taken it to Swix. We're doing it at Myers Pier this year, making it a fairly big event. We hope everybody comes out. Some of the streets will be blocked off. Mr. Reid has blocked off some of the streets to make traffic more worthwhile. I encourage people to come down early. They're going to be on the streets, side streets parking. The parking lot will be full, but this is a special event. But I don't want to not mention Don and Rita Foster, that the first original ones, Bruce and Marjorie Nickel, were the next ones. The firemen took it for a few years. We've had it since the mayor took office his first term, and we've moved it down there. So it's been down there for a number of years. It's a big event, and the nice part about it, all the displays that are down there are strictly bought by donors' money. There's staff money involved in setup, but all the displays are sponsored by donors, and every year we get 40 to 70,000 in donors. Councillor Kelly chaired it for 4 years. Thank you, Councillor Kelly, to carrying on the tradition. Merry Christmas. But I encourage everybody to come on out. I know Councillor Carr will be at the hockey game, but other ones, please come out and enjoy it. It's a great event, and it's a tradition for the kids. And the kids that get enjoyment out of this one is the ones sometimes that are stuck, that don't have anything at Christmas. They go down there, they get the fun out of it, they get the pictures, the fathers and the mothers are there. That's important for them. I think if it wasn't for them, this display wouldn't be worth doing. But it's the kids that get the enjoyment. And unfortunately, I intended to get a copy of this for everybody, but this is a new coloring book. We bought 3,000 of these coloring books, Santa Claus, and we'll be giving them out. And they were done through the Chamber of Commerce, and we contracted out 3,000, enough to do us for at least a couple or 3 years. So that's the new coloring book we'll be giving out. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Carr?
Thank you, Mayor Ellis, and yes, I will be at the hockey game, so go Sens. But the great part about the display is it's there for the Christmas season, and I will certainly be down there to visit at some point. I have two announcements. First one, Councillor Brown and I will be hosting a Ward 2 Town Hall Wednesday, November 29th at 6:30 at the Thurlow Community Center, located at 516 Harmony Road. We'll review the draft 2024 capital budget. We'll discuss city business, provide an update, and also a question and answer session as well. The second is a proclamation that the City of Belleville would like to proclaim November 16th as Louis Riel Day. Louis Riel was a great Métis leader executed by the Canadian government in 1885 for leading the Northwest Resistance in defense of Métis rights and Métis way of life. Every year, Louis Riel Day is held to remember what Riel sacrificed and renew the commitment to complete his work. In Ontario, the Métis struggled to protect their rights, communities, and families. The Métis Nation of Ontario celebrates Louis Riel Day to recognize the many contributions of the Métis to Canada and to highlight the challenges that Métis continue to face. The Métis flag will be flown at the Quinte Sports and Wellness Center on November 16th at 1 p.m. Thank you.
Councillor Enright Miller.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple more comments about our light kickoff Friday night. It's been a lot of fun getting it to this point, and our poor reindeer took sick. We don't know if they have whooping cough or what, but in their place we will have some alpacas for the children to enjoy, who will have their reindeer antlers on. We also, staff has also provided us with an area at the front near the stage for people who suffer from accessibility issues, so they'll have a spot where they can stand or sit with ease and not have to fight the crowd. So thank you for staff for arranging that for us. And I too have a proclamation. Whereas domestic economic abuse is a common but overlooked form of domestic violence that limits an individual's financial autonomy, including denying access and control over resources or constraining economic freedom. Whereas barriers to economic resources undermine a survivor's independence, including the ability to flee abusive relationships, economic abuse has detrimental effects on a survivor's mental and physical well-being and on other social detriments of health. Whereas economic abuse happens across socioeconomic status, race, and age, and is exacerbated by intersectional and systemic factors. Whereas economic abuse survivors have the right to be free from violence and must feel empowered to regain control over their lives. Whereas all levels of government must work to prevent economic abuse and encourage everyone to inform themselves about the signs and impact of economic abuse. Therefore, on behalf of the City of Belleville, I hereby proclaim November 26th as Economic Abuse Awareness Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright Miller. Councillor Alsop.
Thank you, Mayor Ellis, and I do want to say very excited for the festival kicking off on the Friday. My kids absolutely love going down there every year. They were there for the kickoff last year, and it's a really great activity. You know, with the darker evenings now, a lot of people want to get out in the evenings, maybe get some exercise in with their kids after dinner. We probably went down 5 or 6 times last year, just did the lap of the lights, and the girls loved it. They're pretty shrewd. They may notice that the reindeer look a little funny this year, but we'll assure them this is the best we could do on short notice, and what a great fill-in to still be able to have that part of the event. I just wanted to bring something forward tonight. A great community member named Zach Richmond reached out to me and wanted to give some recognition to 4 of his neighbors who helped him out in a very difficult situation that happened on November 3rd. His daughter Olivia was out scootering, and a car pulled up to the side, and Olivia thought that she would be able to go behind the car that they were waiting to back up for her to pass. Unfortunately, that vehicle operator hadn't seen her, backed up into her, and she was hit. She fell down about 3 feet away from the vehicle, and though she was yelling, the driver of the vehicle didn't hear her. So the vehicle continued to back up, and 4 neighbors sprang into action, ran over, were yelling at the vehicle, and the car stopped actually when she was already under the rear bumper of the car. One of the individuals that came over was a CFB firefighter and was able to assess her on the scene, make sure that she was okay. But this is quick action from some very vigilant neighbors that really couldn't have been a second later than it was. Otherwise, it would have been a very tragic ending. So we want to certainly recognize Daryl Ashley, Clint Killam, Rachel Bradfield, and Mona Rogers, who are these 4 neighbors. who sprang into action and certainly saved this young person's life. So thank you to all of them for their great work, and hopefully this is a great reminder to drivers and all of us to have another look over our shoulder and make sure we know if anyone's behind us, because certainly the outcome could have been much worse than it was.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Brown?
Thank you. I have a proclamation. I'd like to proclaim November 22nd as Deletion Syndrome Awareness Day. 22q11.2 deletion syndrome is a genetic disorder caused by a missing section of chromosome 22 that occurs from the child's conception. Such a deletion may affect almost every system in the body and cause various health problems, from heart defects to learning difficulties. Despite being one of the most common genetic disorders, very few people and physicians know about it, leading families to spend years searching for an accurate diagnosis. Approximately 1 out of every 1,000 pregnancies is affected, including a young child here in Belleville. Let's all show those with the syndrome our support for that day, November 22nd. Thank you.
Councillor Chatton?
Thank you, and through you, I also have a proclamation. November the 17th is World Prematurity Day. This date is recognized to give visibility to the problem, raise awareness of the needs and rights of premature babies and their families, as well as the importance of experience and quality care from the health system. The Canadian Premature Babies Foundation has an annual event to honor premature babies, their families, and caregivers by asking 100 countries in the International Global Illumination Project to light their landmarks with purple during November. Later this month, our sign, bridge, and monument will also be purple.
Thank you, Councillor Chatton. Councillor Kelly?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, first, just a couple announcements. I want to say this past Saturday for Remembrance Day was a nice, respectful ceremony at the Belleville Cenotaph, and thanks to all the organizers that were involved with that. And I just want to offer good luck to Councillor Thompson and the Festival of Lights Committee for the kickoff this Friday night. I'm hearing good things about it, so wish you all the best with that. And the Santa Claus Parade is on Sunday here in Belleville, so good luck to that. Due to a prior commitment, I will not be in attendance. I have a proclamation here too. Whereas Rainbows for All Children Canada fosters emotional healing among kids grieving a loss from a life-altering crisis. The purpose of the Child's Grief Awareness Day is to increase awareness of the long-lasting impact loss has on kids and how to provide continual support for them. Grieving children need the support of loving listeners who will validate their feelings, help them understand the pain they are experiencing, and guide them through the healing process. Without support to lessen their heartache and worry, kids are more vulnerable to significant mental and physical challenges, including depression, anxiety disorders, loneliness, self-harm, and substance abuse. Children's Grief Awareness Day is an opportunity to show grieving kids we care about them and they are not alone in their fight to calm the storms in their life. The Belleville sign, Bridge Street Bridge, and Fire Station Number 1 Memorial Garden will be lit now until the 19th of November for the Children's Grief Awareness Day.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Seeing that we've gone around the table here, I will now ask for a confirmatory bylaw resolution, that bylaw number 2023-198, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on November 14th, 2023, be read a first, second, and third time, and finally pass this 14th day of November 2023. Councillor Brown, Councillor Enright Miller, all in favor? Carried. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Chatton, Councillor Thompson, all in favor? Adjournment. Thank you.